Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray and I teach watercolor, and today we are doing our Talking Pansies project. Ooh. This is from our Language of Flowers box and I'm so excited about this box. It was created because I illustrated a book called Language of Flowers and I absolutely fell in love with painting flowers, and I wanted to share with you guys everything I learned during that book. So we will be doing this project in 5 steps. Our very first step is we are actually going to sketch our placement because there's no outline with this project. Okay. And then we are going to do the washes on our pansies. Our second step is we are going to put in the stems and the leaves with our pansies. Our third step is we are going to do the yellow centers. Our fourth step is we are going to repeat that whole thing again, just on the left-hand side. And then our very last step is just the details, the marking details, which, let me tell you, is actually what identifies the pansies. So up until that point, you guys are going to be kind of freaking out a little bit, but at the end, it's going to turn out great. Okay?
Okay.
I am using 5 colors for this project. So my very first color is berry blue. My second color is leaf green. My third color is tiger orange. My fourth color is magenta, and my very last color is violet. I'm using 3 paintbrushes for this project. I have my round 12, my round 6, and my 1/4 inch dagger. You are also welcome to use whatever paints, brushes, paper, whatever you want. Please don't let the different supplies hold you back from actually trying to paint. Now, I think that's all I gotta say, and then we can do our oath and get into painting. Okay?
Sweet.
So if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to read what pansies stand for. This is from the book that I'm so proud of and excited about.
It's beautiful.
And pansy, it says platonic love, admiration, and remembrance. Pansies encompass the full range of loving feelings. Although they can symbolize love for a romantic partner, they are commonly associated with the platonic love and affection shared between family and friends. The pansy is also a flower of remembrance, often placed on headstones and memorials.
Cute.
And pansies is one of those flowers that I always felt like meh about until I had to paint them for this book. And going into it, I wasn't that excited painting pansies. I was like, great, pansies. And then I took the time to look at them, and I can't tell you how much I love pansies now. Like the details, the variation, they're just so beautiful. So I hope that if you're kind of like, if you already love pansies, then great. We're off to a good start. If you don't love pansies, give them another chance. Try painting them because you'll just fall in love with them. Now, I want to share with you basic structure of pansies before we get into it because there is no outline. And I know that's really scary for some of you, but I know that you can do this. And so I'm going to break down the shape of a pansy. So to start, to keep your pansies kind of proportionally in line, we're going to start just by doing a circle, okay? Because pansies are roundish. Now, I'm going to show you 2 different versions, and know that with flowers, there's so many different variations, and sometimes like petals shift and things grow weird, so I don't want you to feel like it has to be that same shape every time. That's just going to be a starting point, and then you'll move on. So here's my circle. I'm going to do a little dot for the center. Now, the first petal, I'm going to do the bottom one, and pansies have a very rounded, large edge of the petal, and then it goes into that center, okay? So here's my first petal, and this circle is going to kind of guide us of where our petals should end or start, but know that it doesn't need to be on that line. It just needs to be around that line. And then we have 2 side petals that come out, same thing, very rounded, kind of have that curve and meet out, okay? And then usually there's 2 petals back here, but sometimes depending on their placement, you only see one, really big one, and then like a hint of a second one, or like this is where you can play with placement because sometimes it's just like sticking out nice and wide and big, and there's a little hint, or sometimes you can see clearly two, sometimes you see just mostly one. This is where you kind of play, okay? So let's do a nice big, and have it go a little bit larger than the side ones. I've noticed that I feel like that back petal is larger, but again, if you have reference photos, you can go off those. And then just a little guy kind of peeking through. Now this is where details come into play, because the identifying marks on pansies is they have this like bright yellow center, and they have this kind of mark on the bottom 3 petals. And now all of a sudden it's a pansy. And then people are like, oh yeah, okay, pansy. And usually these back 2 petals from the ones that I saw do not have these marks. It's like just an even color, okay? So there's pansy number 1 shape. Pansy number 2 shape, circle. And this bottom petal is more like a heart than just like a curve. So it kind of comes out and then it dips and then it curves out again like a heart, okay? These side petals stay with a nice curve and then leads into the center. Nice curve, leads into the center, and then same thing on the back one. Sometimes you see a nice big back petal, sometimes you just see a little one, okay? Now this one, when you do the marks on this one, you need to make sure you follow, the marks follow the shape of this petal. So this heart mark goes out, goes back in, goes back out. Where this one is just rounded. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. This one you have 2, this one is just 1. Okay, and then that one doesn't have any. Now, there are pansies where, let's try and draw it without the circle and see how that goes. There are pansies where instead of these marks, it's kind of more like star flares. That's what I'm calling them. I'm not sure what they're actually called.
If you look at these with like an ultraviolet camera, flowers in general, but those parts of flowers, they look vastly different.
Really?
Because insects can usually see ultraviolet. And so this is like tricking a bee to land here. It's like a flashing sign.
Interesting.
So we see these dark kind of parts, but usually if you look at flowers in ultraviolet, they're wacky.
I really want to know what they look like now. Okay, and then so this is where I want to give you guys freedom to explore the different mark making and colors when it comes to pansies, because literally so many different colors, so many different marks. So this is the basic structure. And then if you want to look at a specific pansy, if you're trying to like remake a pansy, you can do that. Another thing that's pretty common in pansies is, okay, there's my heart. There's my side, there's my other side, there's my big flowy along the top, and another one. Here's my center. This is why I do circles to start with, because you see how it got a little wonky there, but that's okay. Is they have the dark mark.
Voldemort approves.
Right here. And then it's like white right here, and then it's dark along the top. So it's just like color, white space, color. Okay, so you can see that one. That one's here. Can you kind of see that? Mm-hmm. So again, look at the different pansies, play with them, mix it up. Try a few on your scratch paper, and maybe there's like one where you're just like, oh yeah, I can do this one. Well, then do all of them that one. That's okay. There's no problem with that. Just kind of allow yourself the playfulness. And I really, you know that scene in Alice in Wonderland when she's walking through the garden?
Yes.
And the pansy, those are pansies, right?
They're singing. They're the mean ones.
Yes.
Yes.
And they're just kind of like all around her. That's what I wanted this project to feel like. That's why it kind of has that, they're curving in and around as if they're surrounding us. So play with that, play with that. And if you look at pansies too, like these are all as if we're looking over them. I actually think I have little pansies here because I want to show you what they look like from this side really quick. Where'd my pansies go? Hold on. These ones are doing okay, but I want to show you. So this is it flat on. Can they see that? Maybe this side. Okay, I'm gonna cut one, and I'm sorry.
This is called deadheading, and it's actually good for your flowers.
Is it?
Yeah. Flowers are very expensive for a plant to make. So if you have a plant with a ton of flowers, if you cut a couple off, the other ones will get more beautiful.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Okay, so here's one. So I want to, first of all, give you freedom. Should I do it here? I'll do it on this one. It's not a perfectly round circle shape. So the circle shape is just to be a guide for us when we first start. As you can see, this one's a little bit more oval. Now, when you turn it on its side, it kind of looks like these petals are like curving out. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And they have like a really shapely, this part where it comes out of. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. So know that you can do these petals too. Like you don't have to do all of them facing you. If we have some that are turning away, think about that shape. And I'm gonna go to the overhead here where it kind of like flares out, rounds out, flares out this way, rounds out, and then comes into the stem. Okay? So take a look at a few, play with it. See the different marks and the colors. Here are the two petals back here that don't have any marks, that are just kind of even. And then here are the main three. They're kind of fun to play with. Okay, sorry. Let's move on. We good?
Good.
All right. Now we're gonna actually start painting. So I'm gonna start by actually kind of laying out my drawing just with a pencil. So I'm gonna do the right-hand side first. We're gonna draw the whole thing and then we'll start doing our washes. So I want a pansy here, 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 and here. You can add more, take more away. There's no rhyme or reason. I just wanted it to kind of curve up my page. Notice that the overall shape is this, a curve, okay? Also, I noticed my problem when I painted this project that I had to restart it probably about 5 or 6 times because my first pansies were huge. They were like taking up half the page. So I had to really be aware of that and purposely do smaller circles because when I got paint to my paper, I just started going like really big with it. Mm-hmm. So be aware of that. And then if you want to put in like directions for leaves where you're just like, I know I want a leaf coming out this way. They don't have to be fully drawn out, but it's just like giving yourself a guide of lines to follow, okay? And then you can see placement where it's just like, okay, it feels very heavy here and it's lighter up here. We're gonna see how that feels when I put color in, but maybe a nice big leaf there is what I need to kind of bring that back in and activate that space, that kind of thing, okay? Can they see that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then same thing on the other side, except I want it to curve towards the other one. So I'm going to do pansy, 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 pansy. This one I'm going to let it be a little bit taller. Here's a side pansy. And then we'll do our stems. And you could be thinking, but Sarah, these stems are just starting and going nowhere. This is not how this plant grows. And to that I say, you're absolutely right, but we're allowed to do that.
I was going to say this looks like a hollyhock and a pansy had a baby.
Yeah, they're definitely like more like it's growing on a stalk, even though I know that's not how they grow. I just feel like it was a more interesting painting.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then now I can kind of see how I feel about things. Looking at the curve of this curve is a little bit more extreme. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. So I'm actually going to just move this one over here and adjust my lines. There we go. That feels better. This is why drawing things out is a little bit helpful, because then you don't get to the end of your painting and say, wow, that curve was way more drastic of a curve than the other one and it feels off. Now you can kind of like get a sense for the overall composition before you start painting. It's just a great way to feel more comfortable and kind of set you up for success. Okay, now I'm going to use my round 6. You can use your round 12 or whatever brush you feel comfortable using. And we're going to start putting in our colors. So pansies come in so many different colors. They're lovely. So really just do whatever you feel like. This bottom one I'm going to make like a really light, pretty blue. So I'm going to take that berry blue and I'm actually just going to add water to it to lighten it up. And then I'm going to think about the petal shapes. I'm not going to draw my petal shapes in. I'm just going to paint them and draw them at the same time. But this is, if that feels uncomfortable to you, know that you can draw them if you want first. Also know that with pencil lines, once you put water over the pencil lines, they are not erasable. So if you want to like slightly erase any lines, go ahead. For me, pencil lines don't bother me in a painting, so I usually just leave them.
That's very weird about the water thing, that it like sets pencil.
It does the same thing for charcoal.
So you could finish a charcoal painting and like mist it and it would be more permanent?
Well, it will smear.
Oh, okay, never mind.
But I'm playing with charcoal and watercolor for something.
Ooh.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
So here we go. Let's do a little heart here. So I'm going to start off kind of shaping it. Just kind of filling it in. And try and leave a white part around in the middle so that yellow really pops. Okay. We're just going to keep going on. Kind of a larger rounded and maybe a little hint of another one. I'm leaving little white spaces in between my petals because this is definitely more like illustration as opposed to realism. And so we can do things like that when we're kind of illustrating. And then if you want to add like a little bit of a darker edge, I'll pick up a little bit more blue and kind of drop that in along the edge for the bottom 3 and then just along the whole top or the whole thing on those top petals. Okay. And remember, this is not going to look like a pansy until we put in those details. So you're just going to have to be okay with it being what it is for right now and trust the process. All right, I'm going to do the next one. Let's do like a violet one. And this one I'm going to try and leave some white space. So I'm basically just painting around the white chunks of the pansy. So I'm going to, again, let's do another heart-shaped one. Okay, and then I'm going to do a nice thick edge and leave some white space. Kind of do that.
The shape of the bottom leaves of pansies reminds me of a bulb of garlic.
I can see that. And then same thing, we're going to do our side petals here. So they kind of just curve out. Paint the top. Still leaving a white gap for that center.
We've talked about this a lot the last couple tutorials about trusting the process and getting to like it's hard to imagine that this will turn into that final painting. But I don't know, I just feel like it's kind of a beneficial process. It's like learning to trust fall with yourself. It's
Absolutely.
Like learning to trust that you can do something that turns out awesome if you just stick with it.
Yes.
That's a good lesson to like integrate into the rest of your deeds.
I love that idea, trust fall with yourself. That's exactly what painting is. Okay, and then so this next one, I'm gonna create this like pink, beautiful color that I just love. So I'm gonna grab some magenta, I'm gonna grab some violet, and I'm gonna take a tiny bit of yellow. Let's just see what that does. Now know that that's gonna just automatically desaturate my colors, but it's gonna bring a little bit of warmth to it. If you add too much yellow, it's gonna turn it brown. If that happens, just kind of like you can start over and just scoop it off to the center and add more purple and yellow. I mean purple and pink. Okay, so it's like this really pretty, I don't even know what to name this color, but I love it. And let's do like not a heart bottom, a heart bottom petal. Let's just do that color.
that color fuchsia?
I feel like fuchsia is like brighter.
Dull fuchsia.
Yeah, like it's definitely a desaturated. So what I like to do is I like to use this really gorgeous color like this, and then you can take a tiny bit of magenta, maybe mix with some purple, and then right at the like tip, add a little bit of that color. And because it's wet, it's just gonna diffuse out, and it just creates this really lovely color. Okay, and then we have the back two petals, and sometimes the back petal, sometimes you can only really see one of it. And it kind of continues on into like that. Like that one is kind of covering that other side. I'm gonna do blue again, and let's see what happens when we take some of this blue, and what if I add a tiny bit of purple in there? So it's kind of like a lilac color. And then I'm gonna add more water to it so it's just a barely there color. I want like, this is a light value, but it still is a pretty, like I want a lighter value than that, if that makes any sense. And let's just go for it.
Speaking of the pansies in Alice in Wonderland, I watched some of that movie again with my kids recently. That movie's wild.
Is it?
You know what I mean? Just like, yeah, I think it's based off a book, I think, but
Yeah.
it's a trip, man. There's just some weird stuff going on in that movie.
It's been a while since I've seen it.
You should watch it again.
Okay.
The cartoon one.
Do you want to like maybe go on a date? I can meet your kids.
Yeah, I think you'd like them. They look just like you. Do people know we're married? We're married.
I introduce you as my husband.
We have 3 kids.
And I also, one thing that I want to acknowledge that I notice myself doing, and once you notice something, it's not like you have to fix it, but you just like take note of it and then move that information forward, is it's okay for your pansies to overlap. These one I placed right next to each other, which is not preferred, because when they're right next to each other and there's a thin gap, that's not enough space for you to put anything there, and it's just gonna leave like a white area. So you either very much let them overlap on top of each other, or give them enough breathing room to where you can put something in between. So this will be fine, but moving forward, when I go over here, I'm gonna mentally say, let your flowers overlap. Okay, and then let's do like a more purpley version of this guy. And there are some pansies that are like, I mean, this is like a red purple color with yellow, and there are some, there's just so many different colors. They're really just so beautiful. I want you guys to go look at pansies because I just love them. Okay, so let's do a heart shape down here. And this one I'm really embracing the pink purple color, letting it be a dark value. But don't go too dark because we do want to do some detail lines on top. And then this guy. And please know that you could be using your round 12 for this if you want to be nice big. Sometimes using larger brushes forces you to work looser than you might naturally, which is good. So remember, with the exception of this one, these are not looking like pansies yet. That's okay. Okay, so that was step 1. Now we're moving on to step 2. This was a long step 1, but step 2 is where we're gonna start putting in our greenery. And when it comes to the stems and the thin leaves, I'm gonna use my dagger brush. And then if you wanna use your round 6 or your round 12 for these like larger leaves, you can, because pansy leaves, pansy leaves are nice and rounded. They have a slight serrated edge, but if you look at them on their side, they're really thin. So that's how we get these guys. So this one, that leaf is on its side. This one, it's turning towards us. This one, it's more flat out. You see the range?
Mm-hmm.
So play with that.
Kind of reminds me of, I don't know why, but like cilantro or a violet. I wonder if pansies and violets are related. I'm going to look.
They've got to be. Violets are pretty similar. Okay. So let's actually use my dagger brush because I love this guy. I'm going to grab some leaf green. I'm going to mix in some berry blue. And you can have some green over here with some yellow. Just have a range of greens. And I'm just going to start putting some leaves in. Now you can follow your sketch if you want, or you can go off of your sketch.
Pansies are violets.
Really?
Violet is a large group in which, like the traditional violet you think of, is a member. Pansies are also a member of that group.
Well, that makes sense.
That makes total sense.
So even with this dagger brush, you can get like a nice rounded, thick brush stroke. So, and I like it when they kind of come out of the pansy. And you can always go and kind of round things out, give it an edge if you want. Also play with different values. Add water to your mixtures to get a lighter value, that kind of thing, because that is what is going to add to our painting. And you might be saying, where are all these stems coming from? What's connecting them? Don't overthink it. Instead of thinking about like the anatomy of the flower, instead just pay attention to the composition. Where for me, this is feeling pretty empty. So I'm just gonna do a leaf there. I'm gonna add a stem because I just need to like activate this space a little bit more. I want it to feel full. I want it to feel a little bit wild. Ooh, that is a straight up orange leaf. If that happens, just lift it with your paper towel and then go over it in green.
Listen, as someone who loves plants, it's kind of how I can tell if a photo has been staged or not, if there are dead leaves on the plant. Because all real plants have brown spots. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's true. That's true. Maybe that little leaf that turned orange is just...
It just happens.
Just happens. I know you can see with my... But like, I look at the wildness of this. That's what I wanted to keep when doing this pansies, is even though I'm painting them in a line, I still want it to feel kind of like that bushy fullness where you're just like, man, I keep on picking up that yellow color. Where you're just like, where is this going? Or where does this end? Or why is that there? I mean, there are these little guys on this stem that kind of just like grow out of it. That's not a full leaf. So really play with the exaggeration, maybe that's not the right word, the variation of shapes that you can get with this brush. Now, one of my favorite tricks, and if you've been painting with me for a while, you know it, but whenever I need to activate a space, but I don't have a lot of room, but I want it to put something there without it taking too much attention, is I'll use a lighter value because it puts something there, but it doesn't make it obvious. Okay. And again, you can use your round if you don't feel comfortable kind of doing that more round leaf with the dagger. Put in a few more stems here. And let's have...
I like that green color on top.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah, it's good, huh? Okay, I feel good about that. Know that you can always go back and make adjustments, but you don't want it to be finished at this stage because we still have the whole other side to do and that kind of stuff, which which I think I'm actually going to do the other side before I do the details and the yellow centers, mostly because I don't think my flowers are dry yet. Instead of waiting around, let's just paint the other side, and then we'll be ready for it. So I'm going for like a lighter pink on this one, so I'm going to take this magenta, and let's add a little bit of the tiger orange to it, but not too much because that will make it orange. Let's add a little bit of purple just to tone down that color. It kind of like will desaturate it. Let's see how that feels. That feels pretty good. Okay, and then do a heart shape. I kind of want to tone down the pink a little bit more. I'm going to add a tiny bit more purple, and just while it's wet, throw that on top. There we go. Another trick that you can do, like if I was going for a really light pink and if it didn't get there, just pick it up. And now it's like the softest, barely there color, which I like. Okay. Ooh, and let's do like a dark purple blue. I'm going to add some water to it to kind of lighten up that value to leave room so I can do some detail lines. And don't be afraid to like, what happens if I just drop in some purple or just some blue while it's wet? Let's just see, you know? Give yourself that freedom to play with these colors. I mean, honestly, one of my favorite things to paint with these liquid watercolors are flowers, because the vibrancy is there, you know, and it just makes it a joy. Sometimes, like when I'm doing landscapes, these liquid watercolors can be very bright to where it kind of detracts depending on what I'm painting. But with flowers, oh no, my friend, it just brings them, it just makes them pop.
More vibrant the better on flowers, really.
I mean, I think so, but I love me that vibrant color, you know? Okay, and now I'm telling myself, all right, Sarah, you gotta start letting some of these colors or these petals overlap with each other. So I'm purposely going to go over here. Now you might get some bleeding like I did down there, but I always think that that is beautiful. So I'm not mad about it. Okay. I mean, just look at these colors. And also you can do it to where, like on this one, sometimes you can really only clearly see 3 petals. Sometimes leaves and other flowers are on top or in the way, so you're only seeing 3. So just kind of let there be variation. Don't be afraid of a 3-petaled pansy. I kept saying iris in my mind, and I'm like, that's not right. That's not it. Okay, I'm gonna do another like lavendery color. Let's grab some more purple, mix that with my blue. Let me bring this back in. And I'm gonna tell you guys one more time, because I'm telling myself this. I'm looking at this and saying, you know, this isn't right, something's off, something's off. And that is just because we're not at that stage where we add the details that make it look like a pansy. So please don't stop at this stage. Give your painting a chance. Then I'm gonna do the side one right now. Right here. I'm kind of switching my colors because I'm really loving the magenta violet mixture. Maybe you get a hint of that other side. There, okay. And then this one, let's go for like a really soft purple. So I have some purple already mixed on here. I'm just gonna add some water to it. And this one, I'm gonna kind of do the same thing that I did over here, where I'm gonna try and leave some white spaces. So I do the edge thick, and I'm gonna do that part. And then I'll go back over with an even darker color. I feel like it needs a bit more purple, so I'm picking some of that up. Same thing, you do that side petal, do a thick border. And you can say, well, that pink, that's more pink than that one. That's okay. Sometimes we let really small things like that trip us up and make us feel like we're doing something wrong. Oh, that can happen, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I just for a second thought like, I don't actually know what I'm talking about.
There's all kinds of mutations that happen to all living things in development.
Okay, so then yeah, it could be so many different things. And we just appreciate it for what it is, for its differences. Okay. All right. Now let's do our leaves over here, or at least our first like go at leaves, because we can definitely add some more. And then we'll go back in and do our yellow centers and our details. So I got some bunch of different greens mixed over here. I have a dark green, regular green, really warm green. Make sure you add water to the different greens. Let's just start with some stems. And I really want you guys to feel loose with your brush stroke. Let there be lines that just stop. Let there be random leaves that just kind of pop out. Again, I want you guys to focus on the composition instead of the realistic view of how we would see this, right? And remember with your dagger, if you want a thin line, you're going to do that edge, that longer edge down. This one, I'm going to let that one be a little bit thicker, kind of more rounded. And if you want to look to remind yourself, oh yeah, that actually rounds out a little bit more. Okay. And maybe this kind of rounded leaf.
Now I'm kind of mad that they don't grow like this. It would be so cool to just have like a stalk of pansies, you know?
It would. Okay, and then I gotta look at the side. So there's green that kind of comes up into the petal, but trying to paint green on top of this purple, it's not gonna show up, it's just gonna create mud. So I'm just gonna say, that's okay. I'm gonna have one coming out, I'm gonna have one coming out this way, and I'm just not even gonna worry about the one that has to go in there, you know?
Mm-hmm. Why would you?
You don't have to. If there's something that you don't like where you're just like, I know that's just gonna make mud, don't put it in.
In the words of Elsa, just let it go.
Let it go.
The wise woman of our time.
I'm like, please don't sue us, Disney.
Disney, I didn't mean it.
I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. Okay, and then now I'm looking at the feeling and the direction of my leaves all together, like these two pieces working towards each other. I do think I want a little bit more going up over here. Okay, and I want want something over here. There we go. This one I think could use a little bit more activity. This is feeling a little bit bare right here, so let's do another one coming out. Okay, I think I can do with maybe a thin one.
It's funny, I just realized, I'm just thinking about Disney now.
Yeah.
There's no real, like, modern Mickey Mouse movie.
Yeah, that is funny.
That is, like, their mascot. You think they'd have, like, a flagship Mickey Mouse movie.
I don't know, I feel like it's one of those things that you don't mess with it now. It's such an icon.
It's, yeah, already solidified.
Could you imagine the criticism if they tried to do a modern one and if it wasn't meeting people's expectations?
Which it couldn't, no matter what.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so I'm really loving the overall feel of how these things are working with each other, facing towards each other. What I'm noticing is I am missing a few really light value leaves. I got a couple over here, but I don't have any over here. And so I just want to put a couple in. It doesn't have to be a lot. That kind of disappeared on me. There we go. But this is like it just brings in, I don't know, maybe a hint of these are background leaves, maybe they're on the other side. Like, I think it kind of makes it feel more full without it having to be a lot of information, you know? And let's do the same thing. Let's look over here and see how this side is doing. This, I feel like I want something here. You see what I mean when you don't have them overlap? Mm-hmm. It's like this is not enough space. But what I can do is I can at least move these a little bit closer.
I say it all the time, just sign your painting right there.
Perfect place.
Get a Sharpie.
Perfect place for a signature. Let's add some more stems, even though they don't line up with any flowers. I just love doing leaves with this brush. It's just fun.
You're killing it with the dagger brush. But
Okay, that feels good. All right, now we are gonna go into doing our yellow centers and our detail lines. So let's just go ahead and do all the yellow centers first. You can use your round 6 or your dagger or whatever brush really you feel comfortable using. Please know that I give suggestions of what to use, but so much of using brushes is just your comfort level. You're gonna have your favorites. You're gonna have somewhere you're like, oh no, I really like the feel of this brush. Like, you don't have to listen to me, you know? Okay, and I'm just going to take this tiger orange, just go along. And if they touch into the color, that's okay. Because if you're actually looking here, it's the continuation of the petal. If I were to pull the petal off, you see that part? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what we're trying to paint here. And so it's not like there's a separate center that's yellow.
Go lower to the paper.
Okay.
There you go.
There's a separate center that's yellow, and then it kind of is yellow on the petal itself. So we have like a little center, but it continues on to our petal. If that makes any sense. But please know that this is like definitely loose style pansies. So if the center is not perfect, that's fine. Because this is we're just playing here. We're just having a good time.
Most of the time, yellow parts of flowers are pollen, which is the male reproductive part of the plant, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at pollen grains in a microscope, they're like snowflakes almost. You can tell what plant a specific pollen is from because they make like a pansy makes a specific shape of pollen, and a iris makes it. So if you look at them up close, and they're very complicated, they look like snowflakes almost. I
had no idea that different flowers create different pollen shapes.
Every plant has different pollen shapes.
What?
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool.
And so, I mean, like, that's why some people are allergic to, a specific type of ragweed or something because their pollen is abrasive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense actually. Okay, and then on some of these, especially these like lavender color blue ones, I'm doing a light wash of the yellow. I'm just using water to spread it out because if you look closely, and even on this one too, you get hints of green as you separate it out as well. So allow there to be some color mixture. Now we're gonna use our dagger brush or whatever brush you feel comfortable using and start doing our detail lines, and this is where our flowers are going to pop. So on this bottom one, I'm gonna use a dark blue, and I'm gonna have to pour some of that.
Sarah, do say this is where our flowers are gonna pop again.
And this is where our flowers are really going to pop. That was good.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have this dark blue, and I'm gonna use my dagger, and I wanna make sure that this is dry, and that like kind of starburst look, that's what I'm going for. So it's just kind of coming out. And remember, a lot of the details are only on the bottom 3 petals. And sometimes I like to, even if they're not actually on the pansy, sometimes I like to just kind of delicately go around the petal edge. And if you want to do a couple little lines, no one's going to be mad about it.
Watch out for the art police. We gotta make an art police song.
Yeah, we should. I'm gonna leave that up to you. I'm gonna let you handle that.
All right.
Sometimes just a little outlining can just give us a hint. And if you don't like it, and this is why I love watercolor, if you don't like it and you're like, no, those detail lines aren't doing what I want it to do, you can just blend them out. Take a damp brush, go over them, soften them. It's up to you. There might be some that you like that you want to keep. There might be some that you're like, play with it. Okay, so now we're going to this purple one, and I feel like it needs to have like an undertone of pink to it. The white areas are feeling just a little bit too white. So I'm gonna go in and just kind of like mess up that color. I had a little bit of pink on my dagger brush, and I'm just gonna touch it into the white and kind of just, you can leave a little bit white, but I'm just softening it, if that makes any sense. I'm gonna let that dry before I go back and put on the details. And I'm gonna move to this one. So we're gonna mix a really dark pink purple. And I'm going to do this shape on it. So I'm just kind of taking my dagger brush and doing stroke, 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 stroke. I feel like it needs to be a little bit darker. So let's do more purple, more magenta. Let's bring some blue in there, see what that does. Let's grab some like yellow and green. Using a complement and adding to it always kind of like muddies and darkens the value or the color that you're trying to darken. So I'm going to drop that in there. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. Now these kind of marks mimic the rounded shape of the petal. So notice that I start and then it works its way up the middle and then it goes back down. Okay. And again, if you want to do a little detailing edge, you can. And it doesn't even have to follow the edge perfectly. See how some of the drawing lines kind of goes outside of it? And this one I'm kind of just doing petal texture as opposed to these dark marks. Okay. Now here, let's do a dark blue. Again, kind of following the shape of the petal. And this is kind of like a heart-shaped one, so it goes up, back in, and back out. Are you guys feeling a little bit better where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, pansies? Do they look more pansy-ish?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I've always thought they were cute. I mean, again, they're not in my favorite flower category, but pansies are super cute.
They're just, I just felt meh about them, and then after painting them, I'm like, oh, I get it.
It is funny how much Alice in Wonderland, I feel like they're mean. The flower,
Yeah.
just because I saw them be mean in a movie, you know what I mean?
So now whenever you see pansies, you're like, pansy. I'm not going to talk to you today.
You're not going to boss me around. I don't even know if they were really mean or if I'm making that up.
I know, I really should have revisited that movie. Okay, now I'm going back into my violet one, and I'm just gonna lift a little bit of color out here. I don't know, I feel like my purple feels a little bit flat, and I think it's because it's just one value and one color. So let's add a little bit of pink in there and just kind of see what that does along the top too. I know I added it to the white part, but let's also add it along the top. That feels better. Okay, we're gonna let that dry. And then this one, I'm gonna do a dark edge along the bottom of the petal. Which again, there's so many different variations that just kind of take a look at the different pansies and see if there's one that really like speaks to you. And remember to keep it kind of loose, okay? We're having fun here. We're doing gestural pansies. We're just kind of playing. All right, now this one is this lovely pink color down here, and it's that same kind of heart shape. And this is where I like the dagger brush too, because I can do thick strokes, and then I can just take that edge and kind of get thin ones too. I love that color. Now, on a couple of these, they got really, really dark in value. Like here, you can't see the detail lines as much. This one, it's gonna be hard. So if that happens and you're like, shoot, what do I do? Before you paint the detail lines, you can just lift some of that color up. So I'm taking my 6, I'm putting clean water on it, and I'm gonna do that for this one too. I just got a little bit excited, I think, with the color, and that totally, it's really easy to do that with liquid watercolors, is just make really dark even, because you just keep, you know, dropping in color. But you can always lift it. It won't erase it, but it will lighten it. So on these areas that I'm going to lighten, wherever I want it lighter, I'm just putting clean, well, semi-clean water. I'm gonna let that sit for a second.
Sick, bro.
Sick. And then I'm gonna pick up some clean paper towel, and I'm just going to lift.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff.
Right?
Appropriate use of the sick, bro.
That is sick, bro.
That makes him look like the light, like lit up. I don't know how to describe it.
Yes, we had to let the light back in.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna let that dry, and these lighter ones we can go back in and add some detail.
A lot of the time of this project is just letting things dry.
Yep.
It's a good thing you had 2 sides to work on one while the other was drying, or it would take pretty much the same amount of time to do half of the flowers.
I will say that the first probably half of my painting career, I didn't have a heated craft tool. And so I found myself learning how to work around a painting, like start here and move over here, which I think was actually really helpful just for my educational purposes. And now that I have a heated craft tool, I will sit and dry something instead of moving on. So like, I just want to say that there are benefits to not having that and just teaching yourself how to address other areas that you can.
I actually want to talk about this a little bit.
Okay.
I think that in pretty much any creative hobby, when you are a beginner and you have the worst stuff, you, one, make the most progress, and two, really find your quote unquote voice.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when I was learning to play guitar, when I was, like 12 or 13 or whatever, I had the biggest piece of garbage guitar ever.
Mm-hmm.
But that made me find ways to play it uniquely,
Mm-hmm.
and I progressed to like 90% of who I am as a guitar player now in the first little bit of learning.
Mm-hmm.
When I started to get nicer equipment, you start to like fall back on the equipment
Mm-hmm.
instead of the techniques.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably the same with painting. Like you were saying, you had to learn to go around and paint different parts, and that affects, even now, how you paint and probably your style. And having the craft tool is nice, but like you never would have discovered that if you would have started with a very nice kit of paints.
Right. And I think that's why I think I approach watercolors a little bit differently than a lot of the other artists and educators out there, because I did not learn watercolor on 100% cotton paper. I learned watercolor on Walmart brand $5 pad.
The blue pad, I remember it.
And because you can make beautiful works of art using whatever supplies that you have. And I will stand by that always, because it's not about making the supplies do what you want. Instead, it says, how do I use this supply to where I can really get the full benefits of it? And you have to be creative in how you approach things. Where like, because I learned how to use not painting on 100% cotton paper, liquid watercolors work better on not 100% cotton paper. They just do. And I've discovered these paints, and it made me fall in love with color, and it kind of just continued me on this journey. And now for me, like, I love 100% cotton paper and like cake or pan paints, which is already dried watercolor.
Like fancier things.
Like more higher end things, but it's so nice to revisit different supplies and use them in different ways, because I know that if you guys give me any paint, any paper, I'm gonna make something that I'm proud of. And I love that freedom, where sometimes if people start with a certain thing at the beginning, and then like if you only know how to use 100% cotton paper, when you're given a paper that's maybe not super high quality, you'll say, this is trash. I can't do anything with this. How am I supposed to make anything with this? But you're limiting yourself and what you can do when you have that attitude. And so I am a huge proponent of using whatever it is that you have. Are there some tools that make some things easier? Yeah, it just depends on what your goal is. But if like your goal is just to make something that you're proud of, I think that you can do that with literally anything. Sorry, let me get off my little rant.
Listen, I brought it up. It's hard because, getting older brings all sorts of different changes. We have children, we have, jobs and a mortgage and yada yada. So it's hard to actually isolate it. But I'll tell you right now, my love for just making music has diminished with the nicer gear I have. Young Michael would see the equipment that I have now and cry out of joy.
Mm-hmm.
But I have it now and I use it a quarter of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just think it's exactly what you're saying, but just like finding joy in the thing
Mm-hmm.
is better than having better things.
And maybe it is the better thing that gets you excited to paint, because that's a thing too, where
Absolutely.
Where maybe you're just like, oh, I'm in kind of a rut. Well, buy yourself a nice palette, try a new paint color, spoil yourself a little bit to make it feel special, but figure out what you need to do to just get yourself to make something, right? Like that is the goal.
This isn't me on a high horse, because I'm obviously the person that's the problem that I'm talking about. I'm not like trying to look down on people who buy the things, because I am that guy.
Right.
As you know.
I do.
As our bank account knows.
Okay, so I added the details on most of my flowers here. These two I need to go back and revisit. But now they're getting that like kind of pansy feel. I don't know. I don't want you guys to feel like you have to have a super detailed painting to make something that you're proud of either. That's the other side of it, is sometimes it's just fun to play loose and to make strong marks and let the colors bleed and do the loose leaves.
Very rarely is the most detailed one the best of anything. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I think it just depends on preference. If you're like realistic.
If you're shooting for that.
Yeah.
But I just think like in general, by number, I think people like the more illustrative of everything.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do veins on my leaves. So this is the last step, you guys, the finishing, final hurrah. On some of my leaves, I'm gonna take a dark green and just using the thin line, I'm just gonna do a little, and it doesn't have to be on all of them, just here and there. Just giving your leaves a little extra oomph. All right. Now, if you can, I can still see my pencil marks on here, and what you can do is let your painting totally dry. And then, I'm gonna be a little bit edgy here, but you can, the parts that are sticking out from the white paper, you can go through and just kind of get rid of those ones, you know? But you just, if your painting is still wet, there is a very high chance that you will smear paint around, which I have done before, and it's devastating. So usually I like to wait till the next day before I erase any pencil lines, because your painting might seem dry and then you'll discover a wet spot and then you're like, no.
Also, there's two types of people. There's ones who will just keep this in real life, but if you take pictures of this or digitize it in any way, that's very easy to clean up with any kind of photo program. Just like take the pencil part out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, we're done. We did it. Good job, you guys.
Beautiful.
I hope you had fun painting loose pansies. I hope you had an appreciation for them that you didn't have before, and that you took time to look at the actual shape and the patterns and the colors and the opportunity that you guys have creatively to recreate these gorgeous flowers. If you need any of these supplies, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. If you're on Facebook, you can join our watercolor group that's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. And if you're on Instagram, tag us in your work. We want to see it. That is called hashtag Let's Make Art, or tag us at Let's Go Make Art. That's all I gotta say. Thank you so much for painting with me. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.